Okay, so this is actually the unit study guide for Unit 2. Number 1 says describe the position of -5 and 12 relative to each other on a number line, given that -5 is less than 12. So remember we said describe is using words. The position is location relative to each other. So that's kind of another word that relates to location. And we're going to talk about where they are located on the number line. So -5, we would put -5 is 5 hops to the left of 0. And we need to include the word left, that's important. And 12 is 12 hops to the right of 0, and it's important we include that right also. You can go further and explain how you know -5 is less than 12. I'm not going to put anything else here, but if you're confused or you want to make sure the answer you have, it might be slightly different than this. If you want to check, you can raise your hand now, and I can check your number 1. Number 2 says, the thermometer at Kathy's house shows a temperature of -17 degrees Fahrenheit. The thermometer at Bob's house reads -13 degrees Fahrenheit. Which inequality represents this situation? So A says -13 is less than -17. B says -13 is greater than -17. So if I have a number line, and I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to go by 2's, and if I plot, let me zoom in a little bit on that number line. Maybe. Nope, doesn't want to zoom in. Okay, so if I plot -13, so Bob's house, that's going to go in between -12 and -14. So that's Bob's house. Kathy's house is -17. Oops, I'm so sorry, I just messed up. -17 would go between -16 and -18. This is Kathy's house. So we would see which is farther to the left. Kathy's house is farther to the left. Hers is -17, which makes it less than Bob's house. So we have to make sure that the opening is going to the bigger number, which is -13. So the correct inequality, and remember inequality just means greater than, less than, or equal to. The inequality that's correct is -13 is greater than -17. Number 3 says both Greg and Victoria used their debit cards to make purchases. After their purchases, Greg's checking account shows a transaction of -$40.48, while Victoria's shows -$34.21. Write the absolute value of each. Who spends more money? So remember, absolute value is always positive. So if I find the absolute value of Greg, he spent -$40.48, so his absolute value would be 40.48. Victoria spent -$34.21, so she would be positive 34.21. And who spent more? That's going to be whose absolute value is bigger. 40 is bigger than 34, so 40.48, but it asks who, so we want to make sure we put Greg. So you need to make sure that your answer is with the word Greg. Number 4. In a cooking class, each student needs 2/3 cups of peanut butter for a recipe. Jeff has 3/4 cups of peanut butter at his cooking station, while Hannah has 1/2 cup at her cooking station. who has enough peanut butter to make the recipe. So our options say Jeff has enough sugar. That should say peanut butter. It says Hannah has enough sugar. Should say peanut butter. Jeff and Hannah both have enough peanut butter. And neither Jeff or Hannah have enough peanut butter. So what we have to do is we have to convert all three of our fractions to decide which one is the correct answer. So the recipe is 2/3 cup. So if I convert that, 2 goes on the inside with a decimal and 0. 3 goes on the outside. Bring my decimal point up. 3 goes into 2 0 times. 3 goes into 26 times, and I get 18. I borrow from the 2. 10 minus 8 is 2. I add a 0 inside the box. Bring it down, I get 20. 3 goes into 26 times. I get 18. Borrow from my 2. Make it a 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. Add a 0. Bring it down. 3 goes into 26 times. I get 18. And I keep getting the same answer. So remember, we put a little repeat bar. So the recipe calls for 0.666 repeating. Okay. Now we have to figure out Jeff. So I'm going to do Jeff off to the side here. He's 3/4. So I'm going to put 3 on the inside with a 0. 4 on the outside. Decimal point up. 4 can't go into 3, so I put a 0. 4 can go into 37 times. It's 28. Borrow from the 3. 10 minus 8 is 2. When I have a number down here, I have to add a 0. Bring it down. 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 4 is 20. So Jeff has 0.75. That's his decimal. And let's do Hannah over here. She's 1/2. So if I have 1 on the inside with a decimal and 0, 2 on the outside, bring my decimal point up. 0, 2 can't go into 1. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. So Hannah is 0.5. At this point, I can kind of see this is a bit of a mess. So what I'm going to do is off to the side, I'm going to write recipe, Jeff, and Hannah. And I'm going to write my recipe is 0.66 repeating, Jeff is 0.75, and Hannah is 0.5, and then I'm going to add a 0 next to that 5. So when I look, I know that my recipe, if I'm comparing all of them, I have to see, does Jeff have enough sugar? Does Hannah have enough sugar? Do they both have enough sugar? Or do neither have enough? I'm sorry, I keep saying sugar, I mean peanut butter. So if I look at my recipe, there's nothing in the ones place. The recipe has a 6 in the 10ths place. So in order for them to have enough peanut butter, they would need to have a number that's above 6. So Jeff has a 7, Hannah has a 5, which means that Hannah does not have enough peanut butter, but Jeff does have enough peanut butter. So Jeff has enough peanut butter is our answer. Number 5, at Jessica's shoe store, 30% of the shoes are boots, 0.15 of the shoes are sandals, 11/20 are shoes of the shoes are tennis shoes. Which type of shoe takes up the most space? Show your work. So we have to first convert 30% into a decimal. So I'm going to cancel out my percent sign, add a decimal point, and move it 2 places to the right, which gives me 0.30, and that equals boots. My sandals are already in decimal form, so I'm going to leave that. And then my tennis shoes are 11/20. So I have to convert 11/20. So 11 is going to go on the inside with a decimal and 0. 20 is going to go on the outside. And I'm going to bring up my decimal point. Okay, so if I have 20, I'm seeing, can 20 go into 1? It cannot. Can 20 go into 11? It cannot. So I'm going to put a 0. Then I'm pretending like that decimal point's not there, and I see, can 20 go into 110? 20 can go into 110 5 times. 20 times 5 is 100. I subtract 0 minus 0 is 0. 1 minus 0 is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So 20 can't go into 10. So I know this kind of tricks students sometimes, but it's the same concept as before. If we have a number that it can't go into, we're going to add a 0 and drop it down. So now I'm looking, can 20 go into 100, which I know is 5 times. So it would be 100 minus 100. And that number, 0.55, are our tennis shoes. So now if I compare 0.30, 0.15, and 0.55, I've got boots, sandals, and I'm just going to abbreviate tennis shoes, TS. I'm looking to see, I'm comparing to see which shoe takes the most space. That word most tells us that the biggest amount. So I start in my ones place, there's a tie. So I move to my tenths place. In my tenths place I have a 5, a 1, and a 3. The 5 is the biggest, which tells us that the tennis shoes take up the most space. And it says which type of shoe. So I'm going to answer tennis shoe. Okay, number 6 says pick any two of the points graphed on the number line and write an inequality statement. Compare using less than, greater than, or equal to. So what's happening here, and what I would do, and what I suggest that you guys do, is label each of these points. Figure out what they equal. So if I start at 0, I'm going to start with my negatives. So if I go over, this dot right here is right above the negative 4. So this dot's negative 4. So I'm just going to label what the dots are. This next dot is right in between negative 4 and negative 5. So this dot is negative 4.5. And then this dot here is in between negative 5 and negative 6. So this dot's negative 5.5. So it's halfway between negative 5 and negative 6. On my positive side, I have a positive 4. I have a 4.5. It's right between 4 and 5. And then my last one is 5.5. So what I have to do is pick any two of the points graphed on the number line and write an inequality statement. So it doesn't matter which 2 points I choose as long as I write an inequality statement. So I can choose any of these numbers. I can choose any of them. I'm going to write down a couple options. And if yours doesn't match this, that's okay. And if you want me to check to make sure yours is correct, raise your hand and let me know. But I'm going to do negative 4.5 is less than 4.5. Another option is 5.5 is greater than 4. Negative 5.5 is less than negative 4. So any of those are good options. You could do 4 is greater than negative 4. There are so many options here. So like I said, if you want me to check your work to see if it's correct, if it doesn't match one of these, let me know. Also, you only have to have one inequality statement. It just says an inequality. So I'm just giving you multiple examples, but you only have to have one example there.